A faded sweatshirt, a pair of worn jeans, a man pumping gas alone at a rundown station in Oakhaven, tired eyes fixed on the meter, saying nothing to anyone. Officer Brody Vance saw a threat instead of a stranger. He circled the SUV twice, boots striking pavement hard, deliberate, performative. "Where'd a guy like you get a car like that?" he said, sneering behind mirrored
Where'd a guy like
sunglasses.
you get a car like that?
Marcus Sterling didn't answer. Here's what nobody in that parking lot knew. Tucked inside Marcus Sterling's jacket pocket sat a heavy gold ring engraved with a state seal. He had removed it that morning before a campaign stop. He carried it hidden on purpose, out of habit. That ring belonged to the newly elected governor of the state. Brody Vance was about to slam him against the hood of his own car anyway. 4 strangers watched in silence. 1 teenager filmed through a cracked phone screen. Nobody moved to help.
Wrong move. He handcuffed the highest executive in the state. Let me tell you what happened.
The moon was already high over Oakhaven when Marcus Sterling pulled into the gas station. It was 11:15 on a Tuesday night. He was 41 years old, the newly elected governor of the state, though nobody at this pump could have guessed it. His sweatshirt was faded gray, stitched with a college crest, long out of fashion. The fabric had outlived 3 campaigns and 2 governor's balls. He looked in that moment like any tired man on any tired road. He killed the engine. He stepped out. His boots hit the cracked asphalt, and the automatic lights above the pumps buzzed to life, pale and flickering. Marcus rolled his shoulders. 6 weeks of debates, handshakes, and half-sleep had settled into his spine like concrete. He reached for the pump handle. Slowly, he unscrewed the gas cap. The smell of gasoline curled up into the night air, sharp and familiar. Somewhere behind the convenience store window, Leo Thompson watched. Leo was 19, the overnight clerk at the Oakhaven Gas and Go, dressed in a faded blue polo with a name tag hanging crooked. He wiped the same 6 inches of counter for the 4th time. He always did that when he was nervous. Tonight, he was nervous because of the SUV. It gleamed under the flickering canopy lights, black, immaculate $90,000 of imported steel. Leo had seen a lot of cars pull through Oakhaven. He had never seen one like this stop for gas at 11:15 at night, driven by a black man in a college sweatshirt. Leo set the rag down. He did not know why his stomach tightened. He just knew that it did. A patrol cruiser turned into the lot without warning. Its headlights swept hard across the pumps, catching Marcus mid-motion. The cruiser rolled forward, slow, deliberate, almost theatrical, before it stopped at an angle behind the SUV. Not parked. Blocking. Brody Vance sat behind the wheel for a moment before he moved. He was 29, a patrol officer for the Oakhaven Police Department, his uniform pressed sharp enough to cut. His mirrored sunglasses sat on his face even now at night, catching the gas station's dying neon in 2 identical smears of light. He liked wearing them after dark. It made people nervous. He liked that too. He stepped out of the cruiser. He did not hurry. His hand drifted casual and practiced to rest on the grip of his service weapon. He walked toward the SUV the way a man walks toward something he already owns. Marcus heard the door. He did not turn around. He kept pumping gas calm, unbothered, his eyes fixed on the slow climb of numbers on the meter. $14, $15. The spotlight from the cruiser swept over him again, brighter this time, lingering. "You people think you can just drive a car like this through my town without answering to me?" Brody's voice cut flat across the lot. Loud enough for Leo to hear through the glass, loud enough for the 2 other customers pumping gas nearby to go still, eyes down, bodies angled away. Marcus said nothing. He did not flinch. He did not look up. He simply let the pump keep running. His jaw set, his shoulders loose in a way that looked almost like peace. Inside his jacket pocket, hidden beneath a folded receipt and a stick of gum, sat a heavy gold ring engraved with a state seal. He had taken it off that morning before a rope line in Millbrook. Old habit. Don't flash the office when you don't need to. Brody closed the distance in 6 long strides. His boots struck the pavement hard, deliberate, each step a small performance for whatever audience the night could offer. "I'm talking to you," he said. "License and registration, now." Marcus set the pump handle back in its cradle. Slowly he turned. His eyes met the mirrored lenses, and for a moment neither man spoke. Not fear, not defiance, just stillness, the kind that unsettles men who expect a fight. "I haven't finished my transaction, officer," Marcus said, his voice even almost gentle. "Is there a problem?" Brody's jaw tightened. He had not expected calm. Calm from a man in a thrift store sweatshirt standing beside a car worth more than Brody's yearly salary felt like an insult all its own. "The problem," Brody said, "is you." Behind the glass, Leo lifted his phone off the counter without thinking. His thumb hovered over the record button. He did not press it. Not yet. He told himself he was just checking the time. The receipt printer at the pump chugged out a slip of white paper, and Marcus reached for it without breaking eye contact with the man in front of him. Calm, unbothered. His hand did not shake. Brody's fingers flexed near his holster. The spotlight kept burning. Somewhere on the highway 3 miles out and closing fast, though nobody in that gas station knew it yet, a convoy of black SUVs sat parked at a rest stop, engines running a security detail counting down the minutes until their scheduled check-in call went unanswered. Marcus folded the receipt once. He slid it into his pocket beside the ring. He said nothing. Brody snapped his fingers once sharp, impatient. "License, registration, now." Marcus reached slowly toward the SUV's open door. He kept his movements visible, deliberate, nothing sudden. Years of security briefings had taught him that. Slow hands stayed alive. He pulled his wallet from the glove box and closed the door with his hip. The gas station canopy lights buzzed overhead, flickering every few seconds, throwing broken shadows across the pavement. One bulb had been dying for weeks. Nobody in Oakhaven had bothered to fix it. "That's a nice ride," Brody said. His mouth curled, not quite a smile. 90-100 grand, something like that. In that sweatshirt. He looked Marcus up and down, slow, insulting. "Where'd a guy like you get a car like that?" Marcus opened the wallet. His fingers found the license without looking. "I bought it," he said. "Legally. With my own money." "Sure you did." Behind the store window, Leo Thompson lowered himself behind the cigarette rack. His hands trembled as he lifted his cracked phone. He hit record. The screen flickered once, caught, steadied. He held the camera low, angled through the glass, careful not to be seen. He had told himself he was just checking messages. He was not checking messages. Marcus held out his license, calm, patient. "Can I ask the legal basis for this stop, officer?" The question landed wrong. Brody's shoulders squared. "Legal basis," he repeated, mocking the words back like they tasted bad in his mouth. "You think you're some kind of lawyer?" "No," Marcus said. "I just believe you're required to have one." Silence. Real silence. The kind that has weight pressing on the chest of everyone standing close enough to feel it. A woman at pump 3 stopped mid-fill, glancing over, then quickly looking away. She did not want to be seen watching. She watched anyway. Brody's hand shot out. He snatched the wallet from Marcus's fingers harder than the moment required, harder than any procedure allowed. The wallet's contents spilled loose in his grip. A $20 bill, a gum wrapper, a laminated card, edges worn soft from years, in a back pocket. Marcus did not reach to stop him. He did not raise his voice. He simply watched, still level, his hands open at his sides. Brody flipped through the cards, fast, careless, searching for something to be wrong. He held the license up to the flickering light. Marcus Sterling, 41. The address meant nothing to him. The name meant nothing to him. He turned it over once, twice, like it might confess something under enough pressure. Wedged behind it, half hidden, sat a second card. Navy blue, Gold lettering, a small embossed seal in the corner, the same seal that sat quiet and folded inside Marcus's pocket, engraved on a ring nobody here had seen. Brody's thumb brushed right past it. He did not look twice. He did not look at all. "This doesn't even look real," Brody said, tossing the license against his own palm, testing its weight like evidence. "It's real," Marcus said. "You're welcome to run it." "Oh, I'm going to." Brody's voice sharpened, delighted now, like a man who had finally found his footing. "I'm going to run everything. The plates, the registration." "Your whole life if I have to." Leo's thumb hovered over his phone screen, heart hammering against his ribs. 14 viewers, then 22. Strangers mostly drawn in by a title he had typed with shaking fingers. Cop stopping a guy for no reason, watch this. He kept the camera steady. He kept himself hidden. Fear sat heavier in his chest than he expected. Brody stepped closer, close enough that Marcus could smell coffee and gun oil and something sour underneath it. Nerves maybe, or want. "You know what I think," Brody said. "I think a guy like you doesn't buy a car like this. I think a guy like you finds one, steals one, borrows one. He's got no business driving." Marcus's eyes did not move from Brody's mirrored lenses. "I earned it," he said. Flat, quiet, final. Brody laughed short and humorless and shoved the wallet into his own jacket pocket instead of returning it. Not lost, not misplaced, taken. The other pump customers had gone still, now engines idling. Nobody willing to leave, nobody willing to speak. A silence had settled over the lot, thick enough to taste gasoline and dread mixing in the cold night air. Marcus glanced once at the SUV, at the closed door at the ring he could not reach without drawing attention to it. He said nothing about the wallet. He said nothing about the card wedged behind his license, the one Brody had held in his own hand and never once truly seen. Somewhere behind the register, Leo's phone battery ticked down 1% at a time, still recording, still hidden, still trembling in a 19-year-old's grip. Brody smiled, satisfied, sure of himself, in a way that only ignorance allows. The trap was set. Brody's radio crackled once against his shoulder. Static swallowed fast by the night. He did not answer it. He was still holding Marcus's license up to the light, turning it in his fingers like a coin he could not decide was counterfeit. "Sterling," he said, testing the name out loud, drawing it into something ugly. "That's supposed to mean something to me." Marcus said nothing. "Bet you stole this thing from somewhere nice," Brody went on. "Some gated neighborhood, some rich lady's garage." He gestured at the SUV with the license still pinched between two fingers. "Guys like you don't buy cars like this. Guys like you take them." The words landed hard, deliberate, meant to wound. Marcus felt them. He did not show it. His face stayed level, his breathing steady, a stillness that had nothing to do with fear and everything to do with discipline. "I'd like to call my attorney," Marcus said. "You'd like a lot of things." Brody stepped toward the SUV, hand reaching for the door handle. "Let's take a look inside." "You don't have a warrant," Marcus said, calm, precise. "You don't have probable cause. I haven't consented to a search." Brody froze mid-step. His hand hovered over the handle, close enough to touch chrome, not quite touching it. Something flickered behind the mirrored lenses. Something that looked almost like doubt before it curdled into anger instead. "The Fourth Amendment," Marcus continued, "protects me from exactly this." Leo's breath caught behind the cigarette rack. His stream ticker climbed 3144 past 60 in under a minute. Strangers typing questions into a chat box he could not read, too focused on keeping the camera steady, too scared to look away. He had never had this many people watching anything he did in his life. He wished fiercely that they were watching something else. Brody's mouth twisted. "You think you're smarter than me?" "No," Marcus said. "I think I know my rights." The words hit somewhere raw. Brody's jaw clenched, his neck reddening above his collar, a slow bloom of color that had nothing to do with the cold. He was not used to being corrected. He was especially not used to being corrected calmly by a man in a second-hand sweatshirt in front of witnesses he had not accounted for. He leaned in close. What came next was quieter than the shouting before, uglier, for words meant to cut Marcus down to something small and disposable, a slur low and deliberate, a second one layered on top of it aimed at everything Marcus was and nothing he had actually done. Marcus did not blink. He did not raise his voice. He simply absorbed it, silent still. His stillness turning into something closer to a mirror than a shield reflecting every ugly word straight back at the man who'd spoken it. The woman at pump 3 had stopped pretending not to watch. She stood frozen, hand on her own car door, unwilling to leave, unwilling to intervene. 2 other customers had done the same, caught in that particular paralysis that comes from knowing something is wrong and not knowing what it will cost to say so. Nothing to say, Brody pressed. No smart comment, no right speech. Marcus held his gaze. Steady, quiet, absolute. That silence broke something in Brody that words never could have. His hand dropped from the SUV's door handle to his belt. Metal clicked sharp and final as he freed his handcuffs from their holster. "I'm detaining you," Brody said, voice rising, now cracking slightly at the edges, "for investigative purposes." "On what grounds?" Marcus said. "Not a question." A statement flat and final, the kind of sentence that demands an answer nobody in that parking lot was prepared to give. Brody didn't answer. He grabbed Marcus by the wrist instead, yanking it forward, twisting it up and back, in a motion that made Marcus's shoulder pull tight against its socket. Marcus did not resist. He let his body go where Brody pushed it, cataloging every motion, every violation, filing it away behind a face that gave nothing back. The first cuff closed. Cold steel bit into skin. Leo's hands shook so hard the phone nearly slipped from his grip. He caught it against his chest heart, slamming eyes wide behind the glass. 92 viewers now. 106. He wanted to scream through the window. He wanted to run outside and put his own body between the badge and the man being handcuffed for nothing more than existing in the wrong parking lot after dark. He stayed where he was. Fear kept his feet planted. His voice swallowed his hands, locked around the one small act of resistance he could manage, recording, witnessing, refusing to look away even when everything in him wanted to. The second cuff closed. Marcus exhaled, slow, controlled his wrists already aching under the metal. Somewhere past the highway's edge, headlights flickered against low clouds, distant unnoticed, closing the distance, 1 silent mile at a time. He shouldn't have done that. Brody's grip closed around Marcus's arm and yanked hard, dragging him away from the pump in one rough motion. Marcus's sneakers scraped against the pavement, catching stumbling once before he caught his own balance. He did not fight it. He let his body move where Brody pulled it, his spine straight, his face unreadable. "Everybody hear that?" Brody called out loud enough to carry across the empty lot. "Thief, right here." Caught red-handed. The woman at pump 3 flinched. A man near the air pump lowered his eyes to the ground, pretending to check his tires, unwilling to be caught watching. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. "Nobody," Brody said low, now close to Marcus's ear. "That's what you are out here. A nobody in a stolen car." Marcus's jaw tightened, just barely, a small motion that vanished as fast as it came. He said nothing. He kept his eyes forward, fixed on some point past the flickering canopy lights, past the highway, past everything Brody wanted him to react to. Inside the store, Leo pressed himself against the cigarette rack, phone shaking in his grip. The viewer count climbed past 200, then 3 numbers scrolling faster than he could read them. Comments flooded past too quickly to follow, strangers typing things he couldn't process, hearts and question marks and words he didn't have time to see. 412 viewers. 480. 500. Leo's throat felt tight. He wanted to scream through the glass, to run outside and put himself between the badge and the man being dragged across the lot like cargo. His feet stayed planted instead. Fear held him there, heavier than shame, heavier than the sick feeling twisting through his stomach. He thought about his mother. He thought about his job, his rent, the sergeant who golfed with his uncle every Sunday. He hated himself for thinking about any of it. He kept recording anyway. It was the only thing he had. Brody shoved Marcus forward hard toward the front of the SUV. "Thief," he said again, louder this time, performing now for whatever audience the empty lot could offer him. "You think that sweatshirt fools anybody? I know your kind." Marcus's chest rose and fell, steady, controlled. Not a request, not a demand, just silence, absolute and unbroken, the kind that seemed to make Brody angrier with every second it stretched on. Brody's hand found the back of Marcus's neck. He pushed. Marcus's body folded forward, hip catching the hood first, then his chest, then his cheek against cold metal. The impact echoed across the parking lot, a flat, ugly sound that seemed to hang in the air longer than it should have. Somewhere behind his ear, a small earpiece dislodged, tumbling loose from its hiding place beneath his hood, landing silent and unnoticed against the collar of his sweatshirt. An open line. Live. Nobody in that parking lot knew it yet. Leo's stomach lurched. His hand flew to his mouth, phone still raised, still recording, capturing every second of it in unflinching, unforgiving detail. He had never seen a grown man's face hit metal like that. He would remember the sound of it for the rest of his life. Marcus did not cry out. He exhaled once sharp and controlled air forced from his lungs by the impact, rather than any sound he chose to make. His cheek stayed pressed against the hood, cool metal biting into skin, his eyes open, focused, cataloging. Assault, unlawful detention, excessive force. Each violation filed away behind a face that gave nothing back, evidence stacking silently in a mind that had not even now stopped working. Brody leaned over him, breathing hard, satisfaction curling across his face like he'd won something. "Should have just handed over the ID," he said. "Should have just done what you were told." Marcus said nothing. The silence pressed harder than any scream could have, weight settling over the lot, over the pumps, over the flickering lights above them. The woman at pump 3 had her phone raised now, too, hands trembling, too afraid to lower it, too afraid to look away. 543 viewers. 590. Leo watched the numbers climb through tears he hadn't noticed forming. Somewhere out past the reach of the gas station's dying lights, an open audio line carried the sound of metal striking metal into a dispatch room 11 miles away, into headsets worn by men who were already moving before the sound had finished echoing. The line was crossed. The hood's metal had gone cold beneath Marcus's cheek, cold enough to sting, cold enough to anchor him to the moment when everything else in his body wanted to drift. Brody's knee pressed into his lower back, full weight behind it, pinning him flat against the SUV he had bought with his own money 6 months earlier. He breathed slow, in through his nose, out through his mouth, a technique from 100 campaign stops, from debate stages, from rooms far more hostile than this one had any right to be. "Hold still," Brody said, though Marcus hadn't moved. The handcuffs bit deeper. Brody twisted the ratchet past the point of restraint, past the point of necessity, into something closer to punishment. Metal dug into skin, pinching a thin line of blood to the surface of Marcus's left wrist. He felt his fingers begin to tingle, then go numb, blood cut off by design rather than accident. He did not grimace. He would not give Brody that. Inside the store, Leo Thompson set his phone down on the counter for exactly 3 seconds, just long enough to wipe his palms against his jeans. His hands would not stop shaking. He picked the phone back up and stepped toward the door, pulling it open an inch, then 2, angling the camera through the gap for a clearer shot of what was happening at the pumps. He was risking his job. He knew that. He stepped out anyway, 1 foot on the curb, phone raised, breath held tight in his chest. "You don't have to do this," Marcus said, voice low, even controlled despite the pain radiating up through his shoulders. "I've given you no reason." "You gave me plenty of reason," Brody said. He straightened, admiring his own work, one boot still planted near Marcus's ankle, resisting, mouthing off. "Driving something you got no business driving." "I haven't resisted," Marcus said. "Not once." Brody's jaw flexed. He didn't answer that. He reached for Marcus's shoulder instead, and hauled him upright, rough, careless metal cuffs, biting harder with the sudden motion. Marcus swayed once, caught himself, stood. Blood had started to pool beneath the skin at his wrists, dark and swelling. His fingers had gone from tingling to something closer to dead weight, numb past the second knuckle. He flexed them anyway, cataloging the damage the way he'd catalog everything else tonight. Evidence, documentation, a ledger only he was keeping. Not fear, not yet. Just stillness, the kind that looks like calm from the outside and feels underneath like holding a door shut against something enormous. Leo's camera caught it all. The swelling, the angle of Marcus's arms wrenched too high behind his back, the small, involuntary tightening around his eyes that was the only crack in an otherwise unreadable face. 600 viewers. 700. The numbers meant nothing to Leo anymore. He had stopped watching them. He was watching Marcus instead, watching a man refuse with everything he had left to give his tormentor a single visible reaction. "Not so smart now," Brody said, leaning close again, voice dropping to something meant only for Marcus to hear. "All that talk about rights. Look at you." Marcus lifted his chin, slow, deliberate. His eyes found Brody's mirrored lenses and held there. "I know exactly what I look like," he said. "The question is whether you'll remember what you look like later." Something flickered behind the glasses. Brody covered it fast, forcing a laugh that came out thin, brittle at the edges. Big words for a guy in cuffs. Marcus said nothing else. He let the silence answer for him, let it stretch long enough to become its own kind of pressure, pressing against Brody's confidence the way the cuffs pressed against his own wrists. A siren distant rose and fell somewhere past the tree line beyond the highway, gone as quickly as it came. Nobody at the gas station noticed. Nobody but Marcus, whose eyes flicked once toward the sound before returning flat and controlled to the middle distance. Brody shoved him toward the cruiser, one hand locked around the chain between the cuffs, using it as a leash. Marcus stumbled again, caught himself. Again, his sneakers scraping twin lines across the pavement. He was fully restrained now. Stripped of choice, stripped of motion, stripped of every ordinary freedom a man carries without noticing until it's gone. A governor, an elected voice for 4 million people, reduced in the space of 20 minutes to a body being dragged across cracked asphalt by a man who would not have recognized his name in a headline an hour ago. Leo lowered his phone an inch, just enough to wipe his eyes with the back of his wrist, then raised it again, immediately ashamed of the pause. He would not look away again. He owed Marcus that much, even if it was the only thing he could offer. Somewhere behind Brody's cruiser, past the pumps, past the flickering canopy lights, headlights swept briefly across the tree line and vanished. Nobody saw it coming.
Hold on. He actually slammed a completely innocent man against a car and handcuffed him just for buying gas. If that were me, I would have been terrified for my life. In that empty parking lot, imagine feeling cold metal bite into your wrists while an arrogant cop mocks you, knowing nobody is there to help. The audacity.
Brody keyed his radio thumb, pressing the call button with unnecessary force, static, crackling once before his voice cut through it. "Dispatch, I need a tow out here. Got a vehicle to impound." He glanced back at Marcus' chest-puffed boots planted wide, a man admiring his own reflection in a job well done. Marcus stood against the hood where Brody had left him, wrists cuffed, shoulders aching, face carved from stone. He said nothing. He had learned in the last 20 minutes exactly how much silence a person could hold before it started to feel like its own kind of voice. Headlights swept into the lot. Not a cruiser this time. A silver sedan, polished expensive, gliding to a stop at an angle that suggested its owner rarely bothered with parking lines. Richard Vance stepped out. He was 58 years old, deputy mayor of Oakhaven for 11 years, running dressed in a tailored charcoal suit that cost more than most people in town made in a month. He straightened his cufflinks as he crossed the lot, unhurried, a man who had never once in his life felt the need to move quickly for anyone. "Brody," he said, warm, familiar. "Heard the call go out. What have we got here?" "Suspicious character," Brody said, gesturing at Marcus like he was presenting a trophy. "Stolen vehicle, probably. Wouldn't cooperate." Richard's eyes moved over Marcus, slowly taking in the sweatshirt, the cuffs, the blood beginning to darken at his wrists. His mouth curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. "Well," he said, "you don't see that kind of car around here often." He turned to his nephew, tone light, almost proud. "Good work keeping an eye on things. Can't be too careful who we let drive through." Marcus watched him. He said nothing, but his eyes tracked every detail, cataloging the way a lawyer catalogs a deposition. The tailored suit, the familiar tone, the complete absence of concern for a man bleeding quietly against his own car. "Deputy Mayor," Marcus said, voice level. "Do you know who I am?" Richard chuckled, low, dismissive. "Should I?" "You will," Marcus said. Richard waved a hand, already turning away, already bored. "Threats now. Charming." He looked at Brody. "Book him for whatever sticks. Trespassing, resisting doesn't matter. Judge Holloway will sort the paperwork Monday." Inside the store, Leo's phone buzzed against his palm, notifications stacking faster than he could read them. 1,200 viewers, 1,500. The chat scrolled in a blur of outraged strangers typing the same questions over and over. "Who is that? Where is this? Somebody call someone. 2,000. Leo's hands shook so badly he nearly dropped the phone. He caught it against his chest, breath-ragged eyes fixed on the scene unfolding 20 feet away. He had never imagined this many people watching anything from inside the Oakhaven Gas and Go. He had never imagined a deputy mayor standing in a parking lot encouraging his own nephew to keep hurting a stranger. This wasn't one bad cop anymore. Leo understood that now, watching Richard Vance clap Brody on the shoulder like he'd done something worth celebrating. This was the whole town, the whole structure. A system built to protect its own no matter what it cost the people caught underneath it. Marcus memorized Richard's face, the cufflinks, the easy smile, the name Brody had used careless in front of a growing audience neither man realized was watching. Deputy Mayor Richard Vance. He filed it away beside everything else, a ledger growing heavier by the minute. "You're making a mistake," Marcus said. Quiet, absolute. "No," Richard said, already walking back toward his sedan, not bothering to turn around. "You made the mistake, driving through my town like you own it." The word landed and sat there ugly, unchallenged, nobody in the lot willing to say what they were all thinking. Brody grinned, emboldened by his uncle's approval, tightening his grip on the chain between Marcus's cuffs like a leash he intended to use again. Marcus's eyes followed Richard's car as it pulled away, tail lights shrinking into the dark. He did not look afraid. He looked, if anything, like a man taking careful, permanent notes. Somewhere past the edge of the parking lot, beyond the flickering canopy lights, the distant hum of engines rose again, closer now, though still too far for anyone but Marcus to notice. The trap was closing. Brody circled back to the SUV driver's door, hanging open now, dome lights spilling pale across the seats. He leaned inside, rifling through the glove box, the center console tossing papers onto the floor mat without looking at them. Richard Vance stood a few feet back, arms crossed, watching with the mild amusement of a man at a show he'd already guessed the ending to. "Find anything?" Richard asked. "Working on it," Brody said. Marcus stood against the hood, wrists still cuffed, watching the search unfold through the open door. No warrant, no consent, nothing legal about a single motion Brody was making. He said nothing. There was nothing left to say that hadn't already been said, already been ignored. Brody straightened. He reached into his own jacket pocket, slow, almost casual, like he was reaching for a stick of gum. A small plastic bag came out instead. Marcus's eyes found it immediately. White powder sealed tight, sitting in Brody's palm like something he'd carried there all night waiting for the right moment. Richard's mouth curved. He said nothing, but his silence was its own kind of permission. Marcus's chest tightened. Not fear. Something colder than fear, something that understood exactly what was about to happen and exactly how little power he had to stop it. "You don't want to do that," Marcus said, quiet, even. Brody smiled. "Do what?" He leaned into the SUV. He dropped the bag onto the driver's seat, casual, deliberate, letting it land in plain view where any officer, any judge, any jury would find it first. Marcus watched it fall. He warned them once more, softer now, each word measured like a verdict he was already writing. "You are crossing a line," he said, "one you will never uncross." Brody laughed, short, careless. "Save it for the judge." Leo's phone caught every second of it. His hands had stopped shaking somewhere in the last 10 minutes, replaced by something colder, steadier, a grim clarity that came from watching a man's entire future get planted in a front seat. 3,000 viewers now. He didn't check the number. He didn't need to. He zoomed in instead, slow, careful, capturing the bag. The seat, the angle of Brody's hand as it pulled away, empty. Evidence. Undeniable. Permanent. Richard checked his watch, unbothered, a man already thinking about breakfast. "Book him tonight," he said. "Felony possession ought to hold him through arraignment." Marcus's jaw tightened. Not fear. Grief, maybe. For a system that could be twisted this easily by two men in a parking lot who had never once considered the possibility of consequence. Silence. Real silence. Not the silence Marcus had chosen all night, deliberate, controlled, a weapon he wielded on purpose. This was different. This was the silence of a trap closing, of options narrowing to nothing, of a man realizing that composure alone might not be enough to save him. Gone. His freedom. His name twisted into a headline he hadn't written. His story rewritten by two men who would never answer for it. Not yet. Brody grabbed Marcus by the arm, again hauling him toward the cruiser chain, rattling between his cuffs. Marcus's shoes scraped the asphalt. He did not resist. He had learned hours ago exactly what resistance would cost him. He thought briefly of the ring in his pocket. Gold. Heavy. Useless unless someone thought to search him properly, unless someone bothered to look past the sweatshirt at all. Nobody had. Leo watched from the doorway. Phone still raised, tears finally spilling free down his face. He didn't wipe them away. He didn't dare lower the camera long enough to try. Brody opened the cruiser's back door, one hand on Marcus's shoulder, pressing him down toward the seat. Then a sound. Low. Distant. A rumble in the ground before it reached the ears, the kind of sound that arrives in the body before the mind understands what it means. Marcus went still. Brody didn't notice. Not yet. Richard checked his watch again, oblivious, already halfway back to his car. The rumble grew. Then the sirens started. The sound rolled in before the light did a low tremor that climbed up through the asphalt and into the souls of everyone standing in that parking lot. Brody's hand froze on Marcus's shoulder half a second from shoving him into the back seat. "What the hell?" Brody muttered. Richard turned keys, still dangling from two fingers, his expression sliding from bored to confused in the space of a breath. Marcus straightened. Slowly he lifted his chin, and something in his face shifted. Not fear, not relief exactly, something older and steadier than either. A smile, faint, worn, smooth by certainty. He had heard the sound before. He knew exactly what it meant. Leo swung his phone toward the highway camera, shaking breath caught somewhere between his throat and his chest. Red and blue light bled across the tree line, first staining the low clouds, then the road itself, then the gas station's cracked pavement. 4 SUVs. They came fast engines, screaming tires, cutting hard into the lot in a formation too precise to be anything but rehearsed. Black matte government plates, each one built for exactly this. They swept around Brody's cruiser in a single fluid motion and stopped boxing it in, boxing him in a wall of steel and flashing light, where a moment ago there had only been one aging patrol car and a man who thought he owned the night. Doors flew open before the engines had fully died. Troopers spilled out in tactical gear, rifles slung but not raised, moving with the unhurried precision of people who had trained for exactly this scenario 100 times and never once believed they'd need it in a place like Oakhaven. Brody's hand slid off Marcus's shoulder. His mouth opened. Nothing came out. Richard took a step back. Keys, forgotten his easy confidence, draining out of him with every trooper that fanned across the lot. 8 of them. 10. Perimeter secured in under 30 seconds, the kind of speed that only comes from a call that had gone out with a governor's name attached to it. Leo's stream exploded. 10,000 viewers. 20. He didn't check the number, couldn't, his hands too busy keeping the camera steady on the scene unfolding in front of him. This was not what he had expected when he picked up his phone 40 minutes ago. Nothing about tonight had gone the way anyone standing in this parking lot had expected. Brody's mirrored sunglasses reflected the strobing lights now instead of the flickering neon red and blue chasing each other across the lenses. He looked for the first time all night small. "Sir," a trooper called out, voice sharp, aimed directly at Brody. "Step away from the detainee." Brody didn't move. His feet seemed rooted to the pavement, his earlier swagger nowhere to find. Marcus exhaled slow, controlled the cuffs still biting into wrists that had been numb for the better part of an hour. He did not need to speak. He did not need to explain. He simply stood straight-backed still and let the scene around him do what 20 minutes of calm words had failed to do. The local power dynamic that had governed this parking lot all night collapsed in the space of a single breath, replaced by something bigger, colder, entirely out of Brody's hands. Richard's face had gone the color of old concrete. He opened his mouth, once some instinct toward authority still flickering in him, then closed it again as 2 troopers moved toward him without a word. Leo lowered his phone an inch, just enough to see clearly, tears blurring the edges of everything. 12,000 viewers now. He didn't care about the number anymore. He cared about the look on Marcus's face, calm, unbroken, waiting. A car door slammed somewhere behind the wall of black SUVs. Footsteps followed, unhurried, deliberate boots striking pavement with the kind of authority that didn't need to be raised in volume to be heard. The room stopped breathing. Strobe light washed the parking lot in pulses of red and blue, catching every crack in the pavement, every flicker of the dying gas station canopy. Sarah Jenkins stepped out from the lead SUV, gold command stars gleaming on her tactical vest. Her stride even, and unhurried, the kind of walk that didn't need to hurry, because everyone already knew where the power in this lot had landed. She was 36, captain of the state police, her jaw set, her eyes already moving past Brody and Richard as if they weren't worth the effort of a second glance. Brody found something like his voice again. "This is my jurisdiction," he said, chest puffing out, some last reflex of authority trying to reassert itself. "You're interfering with a felony arrest." Sarah didn't stop walking. "I said, hey," Brody tried again, louder now, "you're interfering with police business." "Sit down," a trooper said flatly, one hand landing on Brody's shoulder, guiding him back a step without effort. Leo's stream had climbed past 30,000 viewers, the chat scrolling too fast to read, strangers from 3 time zones typing the same word over and over. Watching. Everyone was watching now, the internet holding its breath, along with everyone standing in that gas station lot. Marcus stood, silent wrists still bound, watching Brody dig himself deeper, with every word he refused to stop saying. "You don't understand," Brody said to nobody in particular now, his composure fraying at the edges. He was resisting. "He had drugs in the car. I did everything by the book." Nobody answered him. Sarah reached Marcus and stopped. She snapped a salute so sharp it seemed to cut the air, her posture straightening into something formal, reverent, entirely unlike the dismissal she'd shown Brody 30 seconds earlier. "Governor," she said, "I'm sorry we're late." The word landed on the lot like a stone dropped into still water ripples, spreading outward through every person standing close enough to hear it. "Governor." Brody's mouth fell open. Richard's face, already pale, went the color of skim milk, all the blood draining out at once, leaving something gray and hollow behind. "That's not possible," Richard said, voice cracking down the middle. "It's very possible," Sarah said, pulling a small key from her vest pocket. She turned to Marcus, gentle now, careful with his wrists as she worked the cuffs free. Your security detail lost your signal 40 minutes ago. We've been running every dark spot on this highway since. The cuffs opened. Marcus rolled his shoulders, wincing once as blood rushed back into fingers that had gone numb hours earlier. He said nothing yet. He let the silence stretch, let it settle over Brody and Richard the way their own words had settled over him all night. Leo watched from the doorway phone, still raised his own hands, finally steady. 50,000 viewers. He read the number this time, and it meant nothing to him beside the look on Brody's face, beside the sight of Richard Vance backing away from his own nephew, like proximity itself might be contagious now. Sir? Brody said the word, catching strangely in his throat, unfamiliar there. I didn't know. I swear I didn't know. Marcus turned to face him, slowly, deliberately. No, Marcus said. You didn't ask. The silence that followed had weight pressing down on the whole lot, on the flickering canopy lights on the wallet still sitting in Brody's jacket pocket where he'd shoved it hours ago without a second thought. Richard tried once more, some last instinct toward damage control flickering behind his eyes. Governor, if I had known who you were, I would never have. You would have done exactly the same thing, Marcus said. You just would have hidden it better. Nobody argued. Nobody could. Sarah stepped back, giving Marcus room, her troopers already moving to secure the scene, cataloging evidence photographing the SUV's front seat where a small plastic bag still sat in plain view. Brody stared at his own hands like he no longer recognized them. He had no idea what was coming. The handcuffs hit the asphalt with a heavy clank, tossed aside by Sarah Jenkins without ceremony. Marcus Sterling rubbed his wrists, feeling blood pool back into fingers that had gone dead hours before standing straight now, taller somehow than the tired man in a faded sweatshirt who had pulled into this lot at 11:15. Brody stood frozen near his cruiser, hyperventilating color gone from his face entirely. Richard stood a few feet away, equally pale, equally still, the tailored suit that had once made him look untouchable now hanging off him like something borrowed. Governor, Sarah said, how do you want to proceed? Marcus didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. Secure the evidence in the front seat, he said. Photograph it exactly where it landed. Pull the body cam footage from Officer Vance's uniform before anyone has a chance to edit it. Brody's head snapped up. Sir, I can explain. You'll get your chance, Marcus said. In front of a judge. Two troopers moved toward the cruiser without waiting for further instruction. One reached for the small plastic bag still sitting on the driver's seat, sealing it into an evidence pouch with practiced hands. The other unclipped Brody's body camera, powering it down before it could be tampered with. Leo lowered his phone for the first time in over an hour, his arms aching, his face streaked with dried tears he hadn't bothered wiping away. 60,000 viewers now. He watched the number climb one last time, before he set the phone gently on the counter, done finished the truth already out of his hands and into the world where nobody could take it back. Marcus turned to Richard. Deputy Mayor, he said, using the title like a scalpel. You said I made a mistake driving through your town like I owned it. Richard said nothing. His mouth opened once closed again. You were half right, Marcus said. I don't own your town. I run this state. There's a difference, and you're about to learn it. He stripped Brody of his authority the same way Brody had stripped him of his dignity 2 hours earlier. Methodical, unhurried, each sentence a small demolition. Badge surrendered. Weapon secured. Suspension effective immediately pending federal review for civil rights violations. Evidence tampering, and assault under color of law. Not loud, not cruel, just absolute. You can't do this, Brody said, voice cracking. You can't just... I can, Marcus said. I'm the governor of this state. I just did. Sarah stepped forward with a second set of cuffs, cold steel, catching the strobing lights as she closed them around Brody's wrists, tighter than necessary, though nobody in that lot found the irony worth mentioning out loud. Richard tried to back toward his own car, 2 troopers intercepted him before he made it 3 steps, guiding his hands behind his back with the same clinical efficiency they'd shown his nephew. "Richard Vance." Sarah said, "You're under arrest for obstruction, conspiracy, and civil rights violations in connection with tonight's incident and pending investigations, several others." Richard's knees buckled slightly. A trooper caught his arm before he fell. Not power, not status. Just a man in a suit that no longer meant anything standing in a parking lot he had once believed belonged to him and his family alone. Marcus watched them both, uncle and nephew, loaded one after the other into the back of separate patrol cars. He felt no triumph in it. He felt something quieter, more permanent, the particular stillness that comes after a debt has finally completely been paid. He crossed the lot to where Leo stood exhausted, phone dark in his hand. "You saved my life tonight," Marcus said. "Do you understand that—" Leo shook his head, unable to find words for the last 2 hours, unable to explain the fear or the shaking or the 60,000 strangers who had watched with him. "I was scared the whole time," Leo finally said. "So was I," Marcus said. "That's not the part that mattered." Behind them, Brody's cruiser door slammed shut, the sound sharp and final, the exact echo of every door he had shoved Marcus toward that night, turned back on him now, with none of the choice he'd denied everyone else. The gas station lights kept flickering above the empty pumps. One bulb still dying, still unrepaired, indifferent to everything that had happened beneath it. Marcus rolled the gold ring between his fingers, finally free, to slide it back onto his hand, its weight familiar, ordinary, entirely unnecessary now for anyone in that lot to believe who he was. To be continued.
Fiction. But that feeling? This man's quiet dignity against arrogant prejudice hits close to home. I've watched people get judged just like this, and it boils my blood every time. How would you react if a corrupt cop treated you this way? Comment below. Like, share, subscribe.